is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Your war room for insider news and draft analysis from deep within the confines of Cowboys headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
The Dallas Cowboys select T.D. Lamb, wide receiver.
And now, your hosts, Brian Broaddus, David Hellman, Bucky Brooks, and Kyle Yeomans.
There are 113 days until the NFL Draft, April 29th of 2021. It's officially 2021, and the Draft Show rolls on into the Dallas Cowboys offseason, and it's the first offseason edition of the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Glad you're with us, everybody, on DallasCowboys.com and coast to coast across the world as Bucky Brooks, Brian Broaddus, and myself, Kyle Yeomans, will break down this draft. No David Hellman today. And, Brian, I think that's why this is going to be our best show yet, right?
Yeah, we're just going to go ahead and hand us the Sports Emmy, the Marconi, whatever you want to do. Dave, feel free to sit at the table while Bucky, Kyle, Beam, we all go up there and get our awards.
We'll put you in the thank you speech. For sure. Thank goodness. And thank goodness, David Hellman, you were great all the way through, but hey, you were at the table today. And we love David. He just had more important things to do today, like interview some guy that was nicknamed the Playmaker or whatever it was back in the day, something like that. Had somebody to talk to that was more important than we are. But, guys, you look at the Cowboys season now coming to a close, and the Cowboys have settled into that number 10 pick, and it's not number 4 like we thought it might have been earlier in the year, but it actually ends up being number 10. You're still a top 10 pick for the first time since 2016, but Bucky, how good of a spot is that for the Cowboys whenever it comes to the number 10 pick? Because they've had some success in the top 10 in the past.
Yeah, you should have success when you're picking in the top 10 because that's really the cream of the crop of each draft class. When you think about the top 10, you think about getting difference makers, game changers. And when the Cowboys have had the opportunity to select up there, they've been able to nail it. And so this year, I think it's actually fortunate for them because I think the needs and what is available lines up with where they're picking in terms of the Cowboys, what their biggest needs are and where the talent is. I think it matches up. So now it's just a matter of determining which player is the right fit for the team and where they want to go.
Brian?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with Bucky because, we were kind of looking at if you had to say a top 4 or 5 pick, if you're looking for, say, defensive help, do you feel comfortable picking it right at that spot? I think initially we said no. Would you consider trading down, grabbing a pick or two from somebody else? Could you go down to 10, 11, 12, somebody right there? I think the Cowboys are in a great spot right there. Offensive players, defensive players, you'll have an opportunity to grab whatever direction you want to go. And, if you still want to potentially trade down again, I think you're in an absolute wonderful spot there. Of course, scouts want to be as high as you can on the board, but being in the 10 hole is not a bad thing, especially in this draft.
And I think we've talked about it before, but really the only thing that you're missing out from being maybe in the top 5 as to being at 10 is the options of where to go in the draft and where you should fall and what you would get in return and kind of the draft capital that you can play around with there. But in terms of selecting, this is right where you want to be. And if you look at the Cowboys' last 6 top 10 selections, 5 have made the Pro Bowl. Ezekiel Elliott, 2016. Morris Claiborne is the only one that did not make the Pro Bowl. Tyron Smith in 2011. Terrence Newman, Roy Williams, and Greg Ellis. That's the last 6 times the Cowboys have picked in the top 10. They've also never selected specifically with the 10th overall pick, but the closest times they did was when they picked 9th with Tyron Smith and they picked 11th with DeMarcus Ware. So you've had some success around that area in the draft, and hopefully they can continue that a little bit. But Bucky, you brought up a point in our group message this week that I kind of wanted to hit a little bit. But Mike McCarthy was asked earlier this week about the identity of this organization and the identity of the Cowboys, player personnel, and kind of where they're going from here. And he kind of gave a non-answer, didn't necessarily answer the question, and kind of kept it close to the chest. But how important is that identity, Bucky, whenever it comes to drafting these players and evaluating who you want on your roster and who you're going to put in certain situations? Because at least right now, this is the first full offseason that Mike McCarthy's going to have in terms of trying to get into that moment.
I think it's very important. I think it's something that should be communicated at all times, not only from coach to coach and coach to personnel staff, but players should understand exactly what this team is about and who the players are on this team and what core traits are necessary. And we're not talking about position-specific things, just, hey, I want a smart, fast, tough, physical football team, and the players that play on this team have to exhibit those traits. For Mike McCarthy to not be able to articulate it, to me, it was troubling, particularly coming off Jalen Smith's long, rambling answer about the identity of the team and all of that stuff. I just wonder if there is alignment from top to bottom, and that's something that maybe Brian can speak on, having worked in the building. I just don't know how you can go forward in terms of acquiring players if you don't have a clear identity for your team and for the individual players that you want to bring on.
Yeah, that's, you're absolutely right, Bucky. And let's look at the teams that are successful throughout. I always like to talk about the Ravens, the Steelers, Kansas City now. Look what Buffalo's doing. There's clear identity of what their football team is. Tennessee's another one. I just feel like, though, Mike McCarthy comes from a program in Green Bay where the head coach didn't have a lot of say in what was going on. If we all remember too well, Mike McCarthy said, hey, give us the players. We'll fit the scheme to the players we have. Well, we'll see if that actually is the case. But yeah, I think that the teams that have continuity, I think they drafted well under Jason Garrett because they had an idea of what kind of player they wanted. And if you look at last year's draft for the Cowboys, coaches coming in late, having to set up playbooks and stuff like that, maybe the coaches weren't involved as much with the Cowboys, and maybe Mike McCarthy, we'll see how much. My experience of working in the organization is the head coach carries a big stick in that room. Whether you want to be like Bill Parcells and beat people over the head with it, or you want to be like Wade Phillips and Dave Campo and just kind of sit back and let the scouts do their job. So, yeah, I think that if Mike McCarthy wants to be involved, he absolutely can. But they need to understand what kind of players that these coaches want and go forward from there. Because the outstanding organizations that I mentioned, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Steelers, they have a clear identity and a clear plan.
If you had to look at the Cowboys specifically, and Bucky, we'll start with you on this one, but if you had to look at the Cowboys, what would their identity be? Because I don't know, Mike McCarthy may not have given that non-answer just based off of keeping it close to the test. He may not know. He may not know what that identity is, at least looking at his personnel. But what would you tab it as a team overall?
I don't know, because it is a bit of a team in flux. Like, we can criticize the previous coaching staff and Jason Garrett or whatever, but I knew when I turned on the TV, I knew exactly what I was watching and what I was going to get from the Dallas Cowboys. I knew offensively they were going to be a mash team that was really driven by the running back, play-action passes, and they had a level of sophistication in that regard in terms of the big plays. And then on defense, it was going to be a hard-playing unit that would run from sideline to sideline and chase the ball and hunt. And so when I look at this team, and because they kind of snickered at the notion, Mike Nolan talked about versatility and wanted to be able to do more things and multiple and all that other stuff, I kind of believe you have assembled a team that's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And so I don't know. And I think it's really important that you heard the players complain about the uncertainty and not knowing. I think it's really, really important that the team, Mike McCarthy, gives a clear definition of the identity so that everyone in the organization knows and that everyone can act accordingly when it comes to acquiring personnel and putting in things that match the talent that is now in the building.
Yeah, and to be honest with you guys, they're in a situation right now where there might be some changes on this defensive staff. And if you change the defensive coordinator, now do you change the identity again? You talk about the defense. We want to be a 4-3. We want to be a 3-4. We want a hybrid stuff. We want to cover this way. Bucky, you brought it up about the corner situation. Hey, do you want guys that play off? Do you want to play guys that play man? I mean, they've got to figure those things out quickly. If they're going to stick with the current defensive staff, okay, well now, tailor your needs that way. But if you're going to go out and you're going to draw this out and wait and, we need to talk to this guy and all that, and that, let's be honest, that's a little bit of the Cowboy way. Hey, let's just kind of wait. Let's see if the problem fixes itself. That doesn't you need to be proactive right now. If you're going to lose the opportunity to have an identity here and not hire the right guy, then man, that puts you further back in the behind the eight ball.
Well, and how different is it going to be from last year to this year specifically? Because when Mike McCarthy was hired, it seemed as if Will McClay was the one that kind of took the reins and said, I'm going to get you some guys. We're going to draft best player available. We're going to scout these guys, and then you'll listen to us. Is that going to shift at all, do you think, Brian? Because, now a year into things, Mike McCarthy has a better idea of maybe how he wants to build that identity from a roster standpoint, and is Will McClay going to have that same kind of say as he did maybe last offseason?
Yeah, I hope they do. Again, I always, and this is the selfish side of me coming out, that I do believe the scouts have a responsibility to the team in a way of helping build this roster, and in a big way. I'm not going to call a third down defense. I'm not going to call a goal line package. I'm not going to do those things. I'm not going to step into the coach's area there, but let me focus on my area. And anytime, I worked in an organization in Green Bay where Mike Holmgren said he was backing the scouts. And, the scouts are wrong sometimes, but I always feel like, though, they're responsible for evaluating these players the whole entire year. And if they have an idea where the coaches need to go, well, then they can help more so than a coach coming in. We look what Rod Marinelli did to this team for 4 or 5 years. In the way that they went away from players or went towards certain players. You can't have that. Yes, I want coach responsibility, but I don't want it just overriding every single thing that I do going forward as far as building this football team.
Brian, I want to ask you this because you talk about coaches and scouts. I want to, just from an overall franchise philosophy, whether it's Jerry Jones or Stephen Jones, has it been set down, this is the kind of team that I want, and then that way it's easy because whoever the head of the football chain is, they set the vision for the program. And so if everyone understands what that is, it makes it easier for the coaches and the scouts to understand this franchise is about this. So when you name those franchises, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, those longtime franchises where if I tell you, hey, the Pittsburgh Steelers are coming to town, you already know, hey, guys, put your big boy pads on. This is how they play, and it doesn't matter who the coach is.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Bucky. I think that, and that's the problem that you have with the Cowboys, I believe, is that, Jerry Jones as the general manager, I'd like to believe that he has his thoughts of what kind of team he wants, but I think he allows a lot of it to be, hey, a head coach guy, what do you really want? What do you envision? How can we help you, kind of thing? I'm not saying that as a general manager you have to beat your head coach over the head with a stick, like I said earlier, but I feel like you have to have ability to say, okay, this is what my guy wants, this is what my guy needs. When I look at my football team, we really lack this. And I think as a general manager, director of player personnel, you've got to do everything in your power to try and bring players in that are to your vision and try and best match what's going on with the head coach. But in this organization, man, there's a lot of, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Instead of, hey, guys, we need to look at it this way and push forward to try and make that happen.
That's why these two are the elder statesmen of the draft show. But guess what? We've got some more members of the draft show, and that's the cool thing about 2020 is the fact that we can just call up whoever and get them to be a part of the show. So hey, how about that? Jeff Kavanaugh's here. Well,
I will have you know I was not invited, Kyle. I just heard that Dave was gone, and I thought, you know what you guys are going to need? Somebody who's incredibly reckless and irresponsible to go with Bucky and Brian. And so I volunteered, and I texted everyone, and I was like, hey, let me in. And so here I am. What's up, guys?
What's going on?
I kept getting text messages, and it was from Jeff, and it was from Chris, and it was like in the middle of the show. It was like, hey, do we need a fourth? Do we need a fourth? I felt like we were playing pickup basketball or like maybe Call of Duty Warzone. I don't even know. It was just like, hey, do we need a fourth? Can we run with four? Let's do it. I'm glad to have you here, Jeff. And Jeff, we're kind of talking about the allocation of where the power goes in terms of building an identity. Is it the coaching staff, the scouting department, the front office from this Cowboys standpoint? I know you kind of heard the last couple answers there. Do you have an opinion on where that power is and how it's going to kind of affect the draft going into April?
Well, I guess I'm a wild card here because I think your identity is basically just your best players. Like to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a long time, I remember my favorite games to watch in the NFL were Steeler-Raven games because I knew I was just going to get people hitting each other in the mouth over and over again, and it seemed like that lasted for a decade. But like Pittsburgh drifted to an offensive team because that's who their best players were, and now they kind of got the defense going again. So I guess for me, the identity of this team is Dak Prescott, or the identity of this team was that offensive line, being able to open holes and protect your quarterback. So I don't know, I kind of struggle with things like identity because I just think if you gather me the best players, my identity is going to be that I beat everybody, and it's going to be awesome. Like not necessarily our identity is Emmitt Smith is going to carry this ball 25 times. Our identity is we're better than you, and you can't stop us.
Yeah, I think from a philosophical standpoint is, Jeff, it would be if I told you, hey, play like a Cowboy, what does that mean? Like
Swipe.
A level of being able to identify, like what does that mean? Do I mean I want like a physical thing? When we talk about the Ravens, play like a Raven is hard-nosed, tough, physical, high instincts. They play to a certain standard. I just wondered with the Cowboys, who has said, hey, this is what we're about. This is who the players must have, these traits they must have when they come into the building.
I'd like to think guys would want to play like Tank Lawrence when they become a Cowboy. Because I think if somebody like that could be your identity, it'd be great. But I'll be honest, when you're thinking about the Cowboys, I consider their identity to be linked to Jerry Jones. And I think his identity is everybody, you can build an individual brand here. You can be incredibly popular. So if you made me pick like who embodies the Cowboys' identity, I would say it's Jalen Smith. I would say it's individual play, individual brand, and that's the identity. And unfortunately, that's one of the hurdles you got to jump with the Cowboys. Probably shouldn't say that right now. All right, it was nice being with you guys today. I'll see you next time.
Then he hops off and rides into the sunset. Mr. Captain Trade Down, everybody. No, I don't disagree with what you're saying by any means. I really don't. And I think that identity maybe shifted a little bit last year when it came to thinking about the draft because Will McClay had a bigger say in it, and like Bucky and Brian were kind of alluding to a little bit earlier, it's a little easier whenever you have those scouts on top of things, and the coaching staff and the front office can kind of rely on them as opposed to maybe taking the reins themselves. Now, in terms of the draft this year and kind of where the Cowboys are and of course picking 10th, Brian, you said before the show when we were just kind of chatting that you wish they would have been a little bit higher just for those options. That's kind of where it is. But is there any player or position that the Cowboys missed out on or may not have as good of a chance at 10 than they would have if they might have lost 3 of their last 4 instead of winning 3 of their last 4?
Well, we all hope, and we all hope is speaking for Cowboy fans, that in fact that you now are in the window where you can sign Dak Prescott. And to me, 10 is a little bit of I think, outside if the quarterback is something that you needed. I kind of feel like, but you're still in position where you could trade up if you want to, but you've got so many teams that are quarterback needy, and with the Cowboys, if you don't sign your guy long term, that's maybe something you missed out on right there. But I think overall, I'm far more comfortable now. I think there's going to be a great player on that board. Smith from Alabama, the wide receiver, I think could be a great player. Pitts from Florida could be a great player. I'm far more comfortable taking Farley right there at 10. If you wanted Parsons, if that was a guy, there's going to be some players, I believe, for the Cowboys right there at 10. I think the only thing you missed out on being in the top at 4 is if you had to legitimately go get the quarterback because you didn't feel like that you could get your guy signed long term.
Brian, you talk about that. I think the bigger thing that would have happened if you finish in the top 5, you now have currency. And you now change the leverage when it comes to the negotiation with Dak Prescott. Now you can kind of put out those smoke signals like, hey, it doesn't matter. We'll just take a quarterback. And as long as like Justin Fields continues to play like that, it now drives the conversation because now you're talking about maybe 4 quarterbacks going in the top 5. And so the leverage changes in it. So it gives you an out if the negotiation doesn't go your way. You say, okay, cool, we'll just sign a young quarterback, and away we go. Or we trade down and we get enough capital to now go and fill a couple different spots. So you lose out on that opportunity, but I think it better aligns with some of the more immediate needs that the Cowboys have.
Well, yeah, and real quick, Jeff, before I know you got an opinion on this, I think that Cincinnati is now in a position where I believe they're at 5, where they're going to hold the card to somebody trying to get up, because Philadelphia, and Jeff and I do a show every week together, and we've talked about if you're the Eagles, you're looking at a quarterback at 6. You're absolutely looking at a quarterback at 6. And, Cincinnati could have been that team. If you want maybe the last quarterback or you want the next best quarterback, that's 5 is the spot. So if you were in that top 5, to your point, Bucky, you were going to have that ability to trade back if you wanted to, or stand in there and make a pick.
I guess what I'll do is I'll just kick a question back to you guys, like Bucky, because my thought initially is if you want to know names that you could have had at 4 or 5 and you can't at 10, we don't know. Because I remember when I used to do simulators and we're doing mock drafts last year, anytime CeeDee Lamb made it to 17, I would just, on my YouTube or whatever, I would be like, no, we're going to restart this. Obviously, that's not going to happen. And, well, lo and behold, it did. But I think in theory, names that the Cowboys could have considered in the top 5 that may not make it to 10, Caleb Farley, Micah Parsons. So Penn State linebacker, Caleb Farley, maybe Patrick Surtain. I think there could be names that you would have considered that because you're now at 10, don't make it there. There could be a corner or 2 off the board. Micah Parsons could be off the board. You could have 2 offensive tackles off the board. So I do think there are names, not guys that I would be like, oh, I can't believe we didn't get to be in the top 5. But yeah, I think some of those names absolutely could be gone when you get on the clock.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing now, the quarterback conversation. We think about the teams at the top. So at the top, you have Jacksonville's obviously going to take a quarterback. The New York Jets are going to be in the mix. We don't know because the Miami Dolphins are the ultimate wild card when it comes to 2 and what they decide. Then you have the Atlanta Falcons at 4. So 3 of the top 5 we know. You talk about the Eagles being at 6. And then behind them, you have enough teams that have the interest. And so if you are in the top 5 and you're the Cowboys, you just talk about being able to really parlay that and play other teams against one another to really maybe get a big haul. But in terms of the players that will fall out of there, because we would think that 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks can go, a good player is going to fall to them. It's a matter of are you comfortable pulling the trigger on a guy at the top 10? Does his grade equate to where you're going to have to select him at?
Well, I think the Broncos in front of you are probably interested in a quarterback. So if Trevor Lawrence goes 1, then you've got Zach Wilson, Justin Fields kind of in that mix for the 2nd and 3rd quarterbacks taken. Then maybe Trey Lance, maybe the 4th guy off the board. So there's a chance for 4 quarterbacks to be off the board. So that way you get, what would that be, the 5th or 6th best non-quarterback falling to you, and hopefully one of those guys fits your need at corner or at linebacker, like we said, with Micah Parsons potentially. I think Micah Parsons might fit a little bit up there in the draft. He would be one of the names, Jeff, that I would agree with you on that wouldn't be there at 10, though he might have been there a little bit early on, maybe right after that 5 mark.
Well, let's take a little vote here. Who's the best defensive player you guys have seen so far? Who's the best defensive player?
For me,
that's what I'm saying. See that, because whoever that is, that's likely to be the first player taken. I think we're all pretty good at this. I think we're all pretty good at evaluating, and I would trust anybody's opinion on this panel right now. If you said, "Hey, Brian, I think that Parsons is the best defensive player." Oh, by the way, Brian, I think Farley's the best defensive player. I mean, I would trust you guys to say that. But that's where, that's whoever the first defensive player is, that's probably not the guy that's going to be on your board. That's not going to be whoever the second guy you say is. Well, that guy very well could be the guy that you have the chance to take.
This is draft 7 for me, and it's the most unique draft I can remember at the top. Because if you're going to tell me Micah Parsons is the best defender in the class, I'll say, okay. If you tell me Caleb Farley is the best defender, I'd be like, okay. If you wanted to say Surtain, if you want to tell me Azeez Ojulari, the Georgia edge, is the best defender in this class, I'll listen to you. I don't know. Because there's no Ramsey, there's no Myles Garrett, there's no Bosa. They don't exist.
Well, Jeff, I was trying to build you up there, Jeff, and now you're making me feel bad about selecting.
Who is it? I mean, you give me one name.
I know.
I can't. I'm not saying
personally. If it was me,
there's not a head and shoulders difference.
If it was me, I would say Farley. And it's crazy to say this for a guy. Both guys did not play this last year. And I'm thinking, which one do I want to roll? If I'm the Cowboys, I think I'm rolling the dice on Farley. But to me, I don't know. Whoever, and it might be, the teams might say, you know what? There's not a consensus number 1 defensive player on that board. And all of a sudden, those guys start going down, 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 down. And you never know. At 10, you might be sitting there you might be the team that picks the first defensive player, is what I'm saying. And that's it. And that's at 10.
Yeah, and Brian, I think then the conversation goes to, if we're having that debate, you talk about Caleb Farley. Do I want to take Caleb Farley? Do I want to take Patrick Surtain? Because I've seen Patrick Surtain play this year. Because some of these debates are going to be decided. Well, I've seen this guy this year. I haven't seen this guy in a year. I don't know if I can do it. And so this year is unlike any that I've seen in terms of defense. I mean, defense is so far behind the offensive players and the skilled players that are available that I think you have to be very, very careful if you're the Cowboys not to reach and to really dig down deep to figure out which defensive player you would want to take at 10.
This is going to be this draft. It could be one when we look back 3 years from now. It could be like the draft with the J.J. Watt and Smith. Those guys. Yeah. They have there's 9 great players taken, and then Jacksonville took Gabbert. And it's like, everybody got a Hall of Fame player, but then you took Gabbert. That's what can happen here. Seriously, I mean, to me, I would. It's funny with the defensive players on the board, and Slater, the offensive tackle from Northwestern, is there. I'm kind of going.
Take the tackle.
I'm raising my hand after I take a bite of my turkey sandwich in the draft room and go, does anybody like Slater? I like Slater. Northwestern tackle. I mean, there's some questions because, like I say, you might be the first team at 10 that takes a defensive player.
Time to go 4 wide, baby. We're going Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Kyle Pitts. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh man, and that's another thing is those wide receivers in the top 10 too. I mean, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith. I mean,
Smith from Alabama. Are you kidding me?
There's guys there.
I can't wait. The Smith conversation is one that is going to be interesting because he scares me a little bit for 2 reasons.
His weight.
He's
174.
He's 175 pounds, and 4'8", 4'9" is fast. But is that fast enough to convince me to offset the skinny issue? Because when we think about it, when was the last time a skinny wide receiver has come in and dominated the league? Because when you take him that high, that's what the expectation is. And I just have these images of Tavon Austin all over again in the debate, like, hey, don't take small guys at the top of the board.
I think the difference would be.
Way to go get him, Krusty.
No.
Way to get him, Krusty Scout guy.
And I think that's so true. That's why I wanted to be on with Brian and Bucky, because I think I'm fundamentally opposed to some of these ideas that it's like, well, I haven't seen a lot of this. Like the short safety, I'll take him. The short quarterback, I'll take him. Devontae Smith, I'll take him. But yeah, it looks different. But if you're making a list of Devontae Smith's weaknesses, what is the list? I think he's skinny.
No,
he's slight. He's slight. I think that's his only real weakness. If you ask me, his
acceleration is through the roof.
Oh, there's no question. No question.
Look, he's a fantastic prospect. He's a fantastic college player. However, when I think about, okay, I got Devontae Smith lined up opposite Jalen Ramsey. How do I feel about that matchup? Do I feel like he's going to be able to hold his own when people put their hands on him? Because Brian and Jeff, the first thing that people are going to do when he's running free in space those first 4 games, okay, let's walk up and let's put our hands on him. And does he have enough to withstand that down after down after down after down? Now, the other thing would be maybe he's Marvin Harrison. So
yeah, there
I
you
think
go.
that's the common.
like that would be the thing. But when you look at some of the other guys that may have more, like Jamar Chase and some of those other guys, you just have to balance. As a top 10 pick, do I feel good about the skinny guy taking him number 1 to be my number 1 receiver?
Bucky, I didn't get to do the show with you last year. What did you feel about the build of CeeDee Lamb when you watched him? The build, how he physically looked.
So it's funny. I think I liken CeeDee Lamb to a more dynamic version of DeAndre Hopkins, because I didn't feel like CeeDee Lamb created like great separation as a route runner, but I felt like he was a catch and run specialist. You want to get the ball to him and let him run, because the best thing that he did was either after the catch or winning the 50-50 ball. And so that was the difference in my mind between him and Jerry Jeudy. I felt like Jerry Jeudy was more of the route runner. CeeDee Lamb was more of the playmaker.
And that was my recent comp, too, when you guys started talking about skinny wide receivers. Now, I know CeeDee Lamb's a little bit, I guess, wider than Devontae Smith, but overall, I mean, you look at CeeDee Lamb out there, and he looks skinny. I mean, he's got that build where he's slender and he's shifty and a playmaker with the ball in his hands. Now, I want to keep talking about these measurables. I think this is a conversation. We're going to have it again kind of in the third segment of where does this fit, and that's why I'm glad Jeff Kavanaugh's on this show, because I think this is going to be interesting, talking about where players are physically challenged and how that kind of affects them as opposed to where it did in the past come draft day. But when we come back, let's do some Twitter on the 20, and we're going to go to the opposite side of the top 10. We talked about some of the names that could fall. What about the names that could jump to the Cowboys at number 10 when we return here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show?
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
On to the second segment here of the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Glad you're with us. Having a lot of fun talking about this upcoming offseason for the Dallas Cowboys and the entire NFL Draft. Bucky Brooks, Brian Broaddus, Jeff Kavanaugh joining us today. And then I'm Kyle Yeomans, just trying to drive the bus, as always, here on the Draft Show. And it's time now to jump into some fan questions via Twitter on the 20.
Twitter on the 20.
There it is. Chris Beam doing fantastic work in the back as always. Now, we're going to start things off from a question from Christian. And I like this because it kind of flip-flops what we talked about in the first segment in terms of guys who could fall in from the top 10 to the 10th overall pick. But Are there any names that are not being talked about right now for the Cowboys at 10 that could be selected there from maybe the backside of that top 10? So I'm going to take these names out of the running. Every one of the 4 quarterbacks. So Lance, Wilson, Lawrence, of course, and then we'll take all those quarterbacks out of the mix. So I'm also going to take Kyle Pitts, Caleb Farley, Patrick Surtain, Slater, Darius All, the offensive tackles, Sewell, and Rousseau out of the mix as well. So that's 10 names across the board that have now flattened away from the Cowboys. I want to find somebody that's not been named there that could fall or could jump to the Cowboys. And we'll start with you, Bucky.
Man, that's tough. You took away all the good players. I mean,
come on, Bucky. Yeah.
You take away all the good players at the top of the thing. Gosh, it's crazy, right? And
go ahead and reach, Bucky. Go ahead and reach. Yeah, reach. Go ahead.
I'm not in love with this player, but I can understand how people are going to fall in love with it. And I'm going to throw the name out, and I don't want to be tied to it, but Gregory Rousseau is going to be a name that we talk about. And the reason why is he's going to test like a freak. He's going to test like a freak. He's long. He has that production from that one season. He hasn't played this year. And people are going to imagine, particularly if the coaches are driving the process, coaches are going to say, man, I take this guy, I can take him to the next level. Being a former high school receiver that made the transition, everyone is going to gamble on the upside. And in a year where you don't have certainty on defense, I just believe that people could reach for pass rushes because they're coveted at a premium.
And Jeff, I know you do not like Rousseau because you and I have texted about how we both do not like Rousseau. So tell me why you don't like Rousseau and how that could be a reach for the Cowboys.
I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to pit me against Bucky to tear down the guy he said, but he told you straight up he didn't want it either, okay? So saying that I don't like Rousseau, I think would make people think, oh, but would you pick him in the 20s? No, I want to be very clear here. Rousseau goes in the 4th round. Okay, I want to be very clear here. I don't need a 250-pound, 6'7" guy who lines up at nose tackle to run around guards. I'm going to throw out a very random name because I was working through some offensive line yesterday. Because Kyle's making us reach.
This is a first.
This is a first. Offensive line. The Cowboys have an offensive line.
This is awesome.
You're making us reach. Nobody wants this pick.
Yes, I am.
Elijah Vera Tucker at USC.
Oh!
I think he can play tackle or guard, and I think he can play it at a high level. So I'm just going to throw out a random offensive line name that I think is going to be a first-rounder that I think could have position versatility and is a good prospect. So you took away, as Bucky said, you took away the good players, so I'll go to this. I'm going to go to the slightly less good players, or I'll cheat if Brian's not going to say it, and I'll throw out J.C. Horn as well.
Oh, geez, Jeff. I mean, how many names are you going to take? How many names are you going to... Kyle, how about a better control of the situation here?
I'm sorry. If I were in the same room, it would be much more controlled. It's the fact that we're virtual, Brian. I'm sorry.
Kyle. My gosh, Kyle. Who invited Jeff anyway? Who invited Jeff to this program? My gosh.
I don't know.
Jeff, that's a very good one, man. J.C. Horn, I think, is outstanding. I'll also say this. We're going to get into measurables, but the Samuel kid from Florida State, I know he's 5'10", but there's some people.
Samuel Jr.
Yeah, there's going to be some people that are going to fall in love with him. But I'll give you one that somebody I think will fall in love with, and it might not be the Cowboys, but he's going to come up the boards. Is Terrence Marshall from LSU, the wide receiver? I have a feeling that these people are now looking at these LSU wide receivers, and if you have 2019 tape, but watch his 2020 tape before he left the program. And people, there's some questions. Hey, why did you bail on the program at LSU? Hey, but I'll tell you what, you watch him in this tape, the 6-7 games that he played, and he is the only thing that LSU has on offense, and teams know it, and he's still making plays. I have a feeling with what happened with the kid at Minnesota, Jamar Chase, people are going to watch this tape, and Marshall is going to be a riser on a lot of people's boards. Probably not for the Cowboys at 10, but that's a guy to keep an eye on, and Jeff's right about Horn, and I'm glad he said that. And I'm also glad he said about the USC guard tackle. I think that was a really, really good get on his part. I really do.
Look, to piggyback on both of you guys' point, I absolutely agree. Vera Tucker is someone that's of interest because everybody wants position versatility up front. You can't get enough guys that can do a bunch of different things, particularly if you're the Cowboys and you're looking at what you have in La'el Collins and Tyron Smith, and just being able to reshuffle the deck if need be, that would certainly work. Terrence Marshall is interesting because I want to say he was the number one receiver when he came out of high school. And having watched him when he was high school at some of these events, like, he has everything that you look for in terms of the size, the athleticism, the route running ability, the skill. And don't underestimate what Justin Jefferson's breakout is going to do for the LSU wide receivers. Right. It's going to change how everyone looks. And even though we say this as scouts, don't scout the helmet, you're going to look at what Justin Jefferson was able to do, and you're going to look at him play alongside Jamar Chase and Marshall. You can be like, you know what? Yeah. If this guy can do it, these other guys can also do it.
To your point, Bucky, I mean, I know Jeff and I have sat down and watched tape for 7 years together, and it's always like you're supposed to be watching this guy, but then you end up watching somebody else. And Jeff goes, "Hey, who is this number 7 that what, you know, or who is this number whatever?" And you're supposed to be watching like an offensive tackle, but then all of a sudden this number 7 is catching every single ball, and now you're going, "Oh, what year is he at school?" And then you make that mental note. Bucky, you and I have sat in those rooms. We've sat in those draft rooms, and somebody brings up a name, and we're like, "I hate this player." But what I'm going to do? I'm going to watch this other guy, is what I'm going to do.
Devontae Smith.
We all do
Devontae Smith, when you're watching Ruggs and you're watching
Absolutely.
Judy, I swear, every play is being made by the skinny kid that's neither one of the players I'm watching, and I'm like, why isn't this dude declaring? He's the best one.
Yeah.
Alabama's stupid. The fact that they had Judy and Ruggs leave in the first round, and the ones in this year's draft, to me, are better. They're better than Judy and Ruggs. It's stupid what's going on at Alabama.
That's the great thing. That's the great thing about KT when he was watching tape. KT was my go-to guy. Like, KT, what year is this kid that I'm watching here? Right? What year is that kid? KT's like, oh, he's only a sophomore, bros. Okay, mental note. Next year.
Yeah, and Bucky, Brian also wants to know their hometown for some reason. He'll always be like, KT, where's this kid from?
Hey, Bucky. Bucky.
No, hey, Jeff, you want to know that because there's certain places in the country that are
Belgrade, Florida. Florida.
Yeah.
If the kids from Belgrade draft
the 757. If you go to the Tidewater region in Virginia, Michael Vick and
Newport News,
Bruce Smith, like there's something in the water, and so you want to know those areas because look, you just find guys. They have a way of just producing
talent. And Brian,
when
KT will give him one of those towns, Brian will be like, thought he might be.
I knew it. Exactly. Straight off the dome. But I agree. I like Terrence Marshall Jr. I like him a lot, Brian, and I think I'd put him right there in kind of that second tier of wide receivers, trying to inch into the first tier, right there with maybe like a Rashad Bateman from Minnesota.
Good player. Like another really good player. That's a really good player, too.
I wouldn't disagree with that, actually. I wouldn't disagree with Tony being better. Yeah. I think Marshall's right there with Tony, though. That's how good I think he's been over the last couple of months. Now, this question comes from Connor Lipsey on Twitter, who, of course, is a big draft nut, and I love following his stuff at Connor NFL Draft on Twitter. He's fantastic. So he asked us a really good question about Micah Parsons. He said, Micah Parsons as a pure linebacker at the 10th overall pick is a no bueno for him anyways. But what if they draft him to rush the passer for, say, 30 to 40% of his snaps? Would that make you feel better about the value of taking a linebacker at the 10th overall pick that could also be intriguing as an edge rusher, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, Bucky mentioned about the versatility and stuff like that, and man, I was just for that size, and he's freakish how big he really is. I mean, I was watching, speaking of freakish, this Xavier Collins from Tulsa. That's another freakish guy to watch when it comes to these linebackers and stuff like that. But I think the things with Parsons that makes him that is intriguing is the size, but I'm also thinking about the rush, and he's right. And I think when you the one thing you want is you want some stoutness. You want that ability to hold up. You want that ability to be physical. And this guy can make some impressive plays. He really can. But there's that scares me to death, those stretches of games where you're thinking, man, just go dominate that Purdue guy. Go dominate that Indiana guy. Go, and he's just not, it's just not always there for him. But as a pass rusher, because what he is, that power enables him when he has to take on guards, when he has to take on backs. He could just overpower people to get to the quarterback and affect the pocket. So, and I think he can finish. I think there's some things that he does as a finisher that are really, really good. I just wish at 6'3", 244 pounds that I saw it like every single play. He wears a number of LeVar Arrington back in the day, that number 11. Mm-hmm. That was a finisher. That was an every down sucker right there. And so I see that 11 in Penn State uniform, I'm thinking, oh, he's not LeVar Arrington, and and here I am. I have to pick him probably in the top 10 to get him.
I'm gonna say this, Brian. I'm probably too close to the kid because I've known him since high school. Yeah. One, he was a defensive end in high school, and so he was more natural, I would say, with his hand in the dirt, and so he's learned how to play linebacker. The only thing that ever scares me about Michael Parsons is, I would say, the level of immaturity, and so some of the inconsistency is due to the immaturity. And I just don't know if that light comes on as a pro. And so when I think of a top 10 pick and we're talking about checking off all the boxes, I think you have to examine the football character and just make sure, particularly given, and I don't want to put this on him, particularly given the Dwayne Haskins situation and how that played out in Washington, you just want to make sure that the guy you're bringing in, he is going to play to the standard because he gets to the game and he's ready to play to the standard. He's not distracted by life.
Well, hey, congratulations, Bucky. You just killed the kid in the eyes of all Cowboy fans. So, congratulations. You just did that.
Yeah. Bucky's doing everybody a favor.
Bucky just put the kid in a headline. And hey, I'm just kidding. But, but when you hear those things, when you talk about taking a guy that high, you want everything to be in line. You don't want those questions. Yeah, the tape is good, but if you're telling me there's immaturity things, that's a
I'm
big
telling
red flag.
What you can read. I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing that you have to investigate. Yeah. Like we talk about at top 10, you want to make sure we get it right. So we're trying to mitigate all the risk. And so you want to make sure that your guys love it. And so if you come from a place where if you're going to take an off-the-ball linebacker, particularly that high, you're thinking, I want someone that is like Luke Kuechly in terms of the maturity or the way that they get it. Or, I mean, even like Sean Lee in terms of just the maturity part of it. That guy has to come in because if he's coming in, he's probably coming in to supplant Jalen Smith. And the love-hate relationship that Cowboy fans have with Jalen Smith, are you trying to replace him with someone who could potentially be like Jalen Smith in terms of that thing? Like, man, does he love it? Does he make plays? Does he feel like he's Hollywood Henderson? Or is he like, what are we getting in the building?
Well, and Parsons isn't alone in that draft. Even on the defensive side of the football, I think with some of those issues in 2020, kind of it gives you an odd look at how they kind of affect these prospects and how they deal with those off the field issues. One of the guys I watched yesterday, I really liked his tape, was Davian Nixon out of Iowa, the defensive tackle. I really liked his tape a lot, but from a couple people that I had texted about it that had kind of talked to some scouts, they have issues or at least questions around his maturity. And this is the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year and somebody who put up a ton of production, but just that mindset and that drive, it's something that I know teams are especially looking for because maybe the Dwayne Haskins situation, because of the mental toughness that took to get through the 2020 season. I think there's a lot of different factors that play into that. Okay, so we got to take our second break here on the Draft Show. When we come back, I want to have a quick conversation about those measurables. Jeff wants all the weird guys when it comes to measurables, and Bucky and Brian are going to put him in his place, maybe. We'll see when we come back here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
We're back with a tasty treat that's sweeping airwaves and taste buds. It's new Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda. Let's take a listen.
Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda's here. A new combo that's music to my ears, okay. Let's play. Cream Soda and Dr. Pepper time. Pour it in a glass of ice.
Ah, music to my ears and mouth. New Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda.
A delicious duet.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way. Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Final 10 minutes here of the Draft Show, presented by Miller Lite here on DallasCowboys.com. Kyle Yeomans, Brian Broaddus, Bucky Brooks, and Jeff Kavanaugh, as this is the first hour-long show we'll have of 2021. The Cowboys eliminated from postseason contention, so it's officially draft season here on DallasCowboys.com. And Brian, Bucky, along with David Hellman, will be every Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And then Jeff, who's a part of our other crew. We've got Dame Brugler, Jeff Kavanaugh, and Kevin Turner. They're on Thursdays at 10 o'clock. So twice the Draft Show every single week. Tuesdays, Thursdays, 10 o'clock. Make sure and set your calendars, set your schedules accordingly to watch us live and then listen to us after those are updated as well. But it's exciting to be along with you guys. And we had this conversation minimally last week, and I wanted to kind of revisit it. We even started kind of talking about it in the first segment, but how far has the league gone away from looking at the measurables, looking at the physicalities and the freaks that are coming out of the draft in terms of just the game-changing type of prospects when it comes to their physical abilities? And are there going to be guys that are physically challenged, taken high, like maybe a Kyler Murray, who was picked number 1 overall offensively, but then there was maybe an Antoine Winfield Jr., who was one of the better defensive rookies this season in the NFL. Bucky, how far is the league going away from these physical attributes and these measurables whenever it comes to their draft evaluations?
You know, it really depends. I think as the scouting world has gotten younger, I think you have guys who have gone away from maybe some of those traditional norms when it comes to certain positions. But part of the reason why the measurables are the measurables is because you're trying to minimize the risk when it comes to drafting players. Like, there's a reason why there's been a long history of certain guys that measure and weigh a certain thing that have played for a long time in the league. And so you subscribe to that. So even though you may miss out on a few gems, overall, the odds suggest that you're going to get it right because they checked off the boxes. That said, if someone doesn't check off the boxes in height, weight, speed, or those things, they better have a superpower, because the only way that you're going to be able to let those guys come in, they have to have extraordinary traits in another area. And so when you talk about a Kyler Murray may be short, but his superpower was his speed, quickness, and his ability to make plays. Baker Mayfield was more the anomaly because he didn't have any of those superpower traits and was taken number 1 overall. But typically, you have to have a superpower to go at the top of the board.
Brian?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though, and Bucky hit the nail on the head. John Dorsey took Baker Mayfield because he believed that Baker Mayfield could command the locker room. That's why he liked the swagger of Baker Mayfield, is why that pick was made. He felt like that Baker's teammates would gravitate towards him, would play for him, would run through the wall for him. So, that's there's certain beliefs, but Bucky's also right about these new age general managers. They don't look at things like the Ron Wolfs and the Bill Polians and the Al Davises and those people. It's a different era of general managers. I mean, I've seen the list. Bucky works with NFL Network. I see the list of general managers that are interviewing for these jobs, and I'm going, who? Who's that? But that's what's going to happen. And this group is going to change, and they're going to draft players differently. Their attitudes about players are going to be differently. They might believe in all the metrics and things like that, but man, it's like they'll just take guys, and it doesn't matter height, weight, speed, and for the most part, I like to see that, because I'm just going to say in this draft so far, I've seen a couple of players. I mentioned Samuel from Florida State. Rondell Moore is another one from Purdue that's 5'9", 180. I watch him play and I'm going, holy jeez. Wow. Okay, I see it. Maybe not. We'll see where he gets in the draft and stuff. But there are some guys that can really get your attention that don't have ideal measurables, but they have, like Bucky's talking about, that superpower that makes them different than everybody else.
Well, and some of those measurables are incredibly important. I mean, I remember, I think until it burns you personally, you can ignore what other people try to tell you. Because, for instance, the corner who runs 4.6 or worse, to Bucky's point, a lot of teams aren't trying to pick a slow corner because you're like, all right, how many great ones have there been? And somebody pulls out a spreadsheet of all the corners ever drafted that ran a 4.6, and they're like, well, we found 2. And you're like, okay, so we should avoid that risk. And it's like, yes, now we also are going to miss Josh Norman. Sorry, but we weren't willing to take that risk. And it burned me when I liked Tease Tabor, and he ran a bad 40. Turned out he couldn't play in the league. So then Cameron Dantzler. I watched Cameron Dantzler cover Jamar Chase, and I'm like, first round. Then he ran in the 4.6s, and I said, end of the second. And I moved him just off of 40 time. So, there's a reason for a lot of these things. I think some of the ones that I wouldn't worry about as much are basically the height and the weight. I understand why you want a 3-cone time. I understand why a corner's got to run fast. But if you're talking about weight or height in some cases, I think those are the ones I would push back against the most.
Well, how about this? If you watch Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern, the tackle, everybody will tell you he's got short arms. And I'm watching him block Chase Young, and Chase Young, they have to move him to the other side of the field to get him away from Slater. There's people say, oh, he's got short arms. Yeah, but he's blocking the best player in the country right now. I mean, what are we doing here? And sometimes you become a slave to that line of thinking, and it'll take you the wrong direction a lot of the times, though.
Yeah, but I would say, like, Cal, outside of this, in theory, what we're doing is a beauty pageant, right? And so if we think about the first round, them getting the crown and tiara, you just want to check off the boxes to make sure. And so it's not like, oh, I don't like a player because they don't have all those attributes. It's, okay, is this a first-round player? Because with your general manager, you're going through the checklist, and you're trying to figure out and approximate, okay, where's the risk-reward factor? Is this more of a second-round player based on, hey, I like everything, but he doesn't have this? And so it's just that in a perfect world, you want your first-round pick to really be a superhero that can leap tall buildings in a single bound, but it doesn't always happen.
Yeah, you want that, like Bucky's talking about, you want your beauty pageant to be in the top 10, one of the finalists. You don't want them to be like doing the number at the end of the night, where the other 40 girls are kind of doing some numbers. Thank you for being in the pageant. You want Miss Georgia, Miss Texas, Miss California, Miss Mississippi. You want those. That's what you're looking for. Yeah.
I don't even know anything about pageants, so I don't know if those states are
if you pick Miss Trinidad Tobago in your top 10, you're going to win the pool every single time.
You're going to win it. You're going to win the pool. Real quickly, we only have a couple minutes here, but I want you each to give me a name that fits into that category where the measurables aren't necessarily living up to the tape. Where you look at the tape and you say, hey, he's a baller, the production's there, the tape is there, but he's not necessarily first round because of blank. I want to know a player from each one of those guys. From you, Jeff, we'll start with you.
Well, yeah, Gregory Rousseau. We already did this.
Okay.
Yeah, Gregory Rousseau is tall and he's long and he might run a good 40 and he might test well athletically, and he had 18 sacks in a single season against decent competition. What's not to like? And I think I watched that tape and I came away from it going, that ain't a first round player, and I have no idea why people are talking about him in the top 10.
Bucky? That's an interesting one. I'm gonna be the positive end because I felt like I was negative early with Micah, so I'm gonna go up. I'm gonna give you a name, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and the wide receiver from USC. He's probably gonna come in a little under the standard stuff, but in terms of being a baller, he's an absolute baller. He has some of that Steve Smith, old school Steve Smith to him in terms of his competitiveness and grit. That's gonna serve him well because I think he's gonna be an outstanding pro.
Yeah, I've mentioned Samuel a bunch from Florida State. I think someone's going to get a hell of a football player there. I love the fact that all these players have their dads were NFL players. Samuel, you're going to watch the Clemson tape and you're going to say, oh, taller guy got him. But if you watch all his tape, all the opportunities he had, this kid goes out there and he plays hard every single snap. He makes plays on the ball. He can cover. He can tackle. I mean, he's kind of a block-down tackler, but he's aggressive. He goes after you. I think people are going to fall in love with him. I hope they give him the benefit of the doubt because of his height, though. He might be at the bottom of the first round. Somebody might take him in the second, but he's going to be a hell of a football player for somebody.
I'm sorry, Kyle. I thought we were doing negative things. I didn't realize we were doing positive things. So I thought we were just doing straight hating. I didn't know we were doing positive things. Then I also want to piggyback. I want to piggyback on what Brian's saying and throw out another corner. Elijah Molden at Washington, 5'10".
Good player.
Baller.
Yeah, good player.
Baller. I don't care about your height. Come on down. But to Bucky's point, I'm not picking you in the first round because of your height.
Yeah, good player. His dad was a good player. Elijah's a really solid player. A lot of versatility too.
Somewhere, some way, Isaiah Stanback is smiling with his UW on DallasCowboys.com. Yeah. He's a huge UW guy.
Hey, for a short guy, don't forget Nick Bolton, linebacker, Missouri.
Oh
yeah. Yeah, don't forget him. Yep. I mean, he's probably gonna be taken down towards the bottom, but he needs to be more up to the top. Don't let that 6 foot height scare you at all. Guy makes
Pick him at number 10, Brian.
Love it, man. Hey, Bucky told me Parsons is kind of out there.
That's not what he said.
No, I'm gonna say Bolton is not gonna have those issues. He loves football. I can tell watching tape. He loves football.
He loves it. He loves it. We've got to get our background information on Nick Bolton from Bucky Brooks whenever we get an opportunity to here over the next couple of weeks. That's going to do it for us here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Be sure to join us on Thursday at 10 o'clock. We've got Dane, Jeff, and KT breaking things down for you as we continue on here into the 2020 offseason, just 113 days away from the NFL Draft. But for Bucky Brooks, for Jeff Cavanaugh, thanks for hopping on with us, Jeff. For Brian Broaddus and for Chris Beam, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long. We'll see you next time on the Draft Show.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?